Welcome back to the weekly Big Sky Media Panel, Big Sky Now Media Panel. I'm Josh Dugan, and we got the crew back with us. Mark Nelke of the Coeur d'Alene Press, Fritz Neighbor of the Daily Interlake, and Ian Bivona of the Columbia Basin Herald. Thank you guys, as always, for taking the time to do this. Here to recap some Big Sky playoff action. We had 4 teams in action. Big Sky went 2-2 over the weekend, so 2 more teams are sent home, and we got 2 teams staying alive. So it's getting pretty interesting. We'll start this out with the performance of the week and kind of go around the circle from there. Mark, why don't we jump to you? Just so the listeners know, Mark was at the Idaho game and Fritz was at the Montana game, so we did have some live coverage from the team here, out at all the games in the Northwest here. But, Mark, your performance of the week.
All right. Well, Fritz will probably weigh in on this, too, a little bit. But Montana, their big win in the snow. I watched the replay of it last night, and it was pretty impressive. They run the ball and throw the ball. That second pass that he threw that was errant and got intercepted. That didn't look good. But other than that, the Griz look really good. They could run it, they could play defense, and they could throw it. And they got playmakers, and it was a pretty impressive night.
Yeah, full team effort from the Griz for sure. Fritz, we'll go to you. Your performance of the week.
Oh, I guess I'll stick with Clifton McDowell. He just seems to get a little bit better every week playing quarterback for the Grizzlies. Like we just mentioned, his second pass of the game sailed on him and was tipped and intercepted, and then Delaware went backwards instead of forwards and missed a field goal or punted. I can't even remember now. It's a long time ago. I was knee deep in snow, but from there he just he played really well. He just seems to be such a tough tackle. Seems to get away from pressure. He had a couple really nice passes. One 55 yards, just a perfect window that he threw into, and then I was just impressed when he scrambled, and I believe he went the wrong direction on dual route, and but still was able to find a check down to Evan Schaefer, who ran over a cornerback and scored.
Oh, that was a good
and
play.
That pretty much put the game away. So I'll go with Cliff. I like guys named Cliff anyway. So
one of those names.
I'll go with that one.
Yeah, you know what's crazy too is I almost forgot about that interception because down the stretch the Griz just ran away with it. It's like that could have been a crucial play. They bounced right back, shook it off, and that's big time in the playoffs. You can't let those mistakes eat at you. Ian, your performance of the week.
Yeah, I'm going to make it 3 for 3 with Montana. I'm going with their offensive line, staying the way they did, especially in that snow when it gets a little slick out there on the field. But paving the way for 203 rushing yards in the game, not giving up any sacks. Pretty good performance for them.
Yeah, that Griz O-line doesn't get enough credit because all year long they've been special. I'm going to go with the Vandals, actually. Their special teams unit kind of won them the game. Jermaine Jackson had an 86-yard punt return. That put the Vandals on the board. Ricardo Chavez drilled a pair of field goals, hit the game winner. Playoff football, we saw it in the Montana State game. Sometimes it comes down to special teams. Doesn't matter how many big plays you make. You got to do the little things, and Idaho did it well, and that got them a win at home. One of those tough, evenly matched playoff games, but the little things won them that one. Did want to get your guys just kind of reactions to last week's game. Start with that Montana State game, then we kind of go from there. Fritz, I'll jump to you, just kind of your reaction to that one. Bobcat season comes to the end, and just kind of a wild game.
Yeah, I think you better dot all your I's and cross all your T's when you play North Dakota State. They've just been there so many times. I think they're now 46-4 in FCS playoff games. They're down 7, starting from inside their own 10. Would have been a perfect time for MSU to make a stop. Aside from Matt, special teams didn't really help them at all. I think they were pretty good in the kick return, punt return game, but and punting and kicking, but kickoffs. But missing 2 field goals early, just make one of those. Contrast that with U of M, who had their kicker Ramos kick one 44 yards through a driving snow, and he drills a dead center. Those things make differences, and you look at Idaho too. They don't win that game without their special teams. So, tough loss for the Cats. We ran a story in today's Interlake about how 3 of their O-linemen are transferring out or in the portal. I think they'll still be really good up front because they have been for quite some time. But just a tough one. NDSU to me is sort of like Alabama and the Yankees and the Lakers all rolled into one. I just couldn't help rooting for the Bobcats to get them out of the playoffs, and now it's going to be up to the Coyotes of South Dakota.
You know what? It's funny you say that about Alabama. I was literally about to say it reminds me of Bama Doesn't matter who they're playing. This time of year, you just don't want to play them. Michigan, there was a video that came out of their reaction to having to play Bama. They weren't too thrilled. Doesn't matter how the year went. It's like NDSU. Tough to play this time of year. Well said, Fritz. Ian, your reaction to that one, just like I said, a crazy game.
Yeah, just an unreal way to lose at the end of that game. Getting the extra point blocked. I want to give a shout out to Tommy Mulatto. 355 total yards, 4 total touchdowns in the game. Really putting the team on his back in that game to be able to get a 2 overtime there. But it just kind of came down to a couple of late plays in the game. That 4th and 2 on the North Dakota around the 40-yard line, maybe a little closer, not converting there. And then Chambers gets sacked twice a couple drives later, right before the clock's about to run out in the 4th quarter. Can't get into field goal range to take a late lead there. So it just really kind of came down to those plays late in the game.
Yeah, just overall an epic college football game. I wanted to see the Bobcats pull it out for the Big Sky's sake, but yeah, just as a fan of football, that was one of those games literally came down to one play, very end, just a crazy game. How about you, Mark, your reaction to that one?
Yeah, well, I kind of heard, after the fact about their kicking woes, and later I saw they missed 2 field goals early, and even before that, when I was driving down to Moscow, I was listening to the radio broadcast. It was the North Dakota State feed, and after Montana State scored so easily on that overtime, I thought, well, they should just go for 2 and end it. I mean, they're 2 yards away. If you've got kicking problems and you're 2 yards away from winning, what better chance are you going to get? And then the other thing they said on the North Dakota State broadcast is they brought in this 6'7" backup offensive lineman for a field goal block that they had never done before, and that was the first time they tried it, and because they saw that they had kicked, the Montana State kicker was kicking low, so the guy got his hand on it and blocked it. So it was pretty good scouting, and
he got his forearm on it.
Yeah, that's right. It was like his forearm. That's right.
The laces printed out on Twitter. They should have had a picture of it on Twitter.
Okay, yeah, they interviewed the guy later, and he said he had a big mark on his arm. So.
Yeah.
Might have to get that one tattooed. No, I'm kidding. But no, I mean, that's how it is with the Bison. You just can't play around with them. They make an adjustment late and beat you. I will say there was over 880 total yards in that game, and it came down to a PAT. Mark, I do think that's a great point. I never even thought of that. They could have gone for 2. I will say if Malott doesn't get hurt and Chambers is 100%, maybe that's a different case right there. You feel comfortable having Chambers run it up the gut. But both those guys battling injury, definitely. You hate to see that change a game, but it definitely had a big impact. But, yeah, no, overall, just a wild game. I want to get your guys' thoughts. We'll move along. I will pat myself on the back. There was 575 total rushing yards. Last week I said 600. I actually got close, so I should have bet on it. Couldn't find the line on Montana Sports Bet. So that's a story for another time. But Sac State at South Dakota, we'll keep this one short and sweet. Just want to get your thoughts on this one. Sac State season comes to an end. The Hornets hung around, but ultimately the Coyotes did them in. Just any reaction to this game? Ian, we'll start with you and just go around real quick.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously really tough to get yourself out of a hole like that. I mean, you go down 10-0, and then sack, fumble, gets returned for a touchdown. And I believe Bennett went down in that game as well. I didn't get the chance to watch it. Losing your quarterback in that first half and then going down early, obviously tough to come back. But, I mean, for a team that kind of snuck its way into the playoffs, not a bad showing getting to that round after first round win over North Dakota. So
yeah, the number 3 team in the country. They played them tough after falling behind early. They actually brought in a transfer from South Dakota, which was interesting. I believe it was Carson Camp, so that was kind of a fun side story. But Mark, any reaction to this game?
Not too much. I mean, it's like most other teams in the playoffs. It seems like they got running quarterbacks, and it's like Sac State has 1, Montana State has 2, North Dakota State has 2, Montana. Now they got a passer who runs. Idaho is a passer who scrambles, but it's just interesting how many teams have running quarterbacks, and I guess we're going to talk about Montana State here in a minute, and I'll get to that later on what I think about their 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah, it is interesting. The modern game, you used to think of the traditional drop back kind of QB, the Peyton Mannings of the world. Nowadays, you gotta be mobile, gotta be able to move, especially in college football. No doubt about it. Fritz, any takeaways from that game?
Oh, it was a awfully rough start for the Hornets. I thought they made a game of it. Just too big of a hole to dig out of, and now it sets up Pontius Bowl too, because we just mentioned the guy that blocked the field goal for NDSU. His name is Garrett Pontius, the 6'8" kid. and his younger brother plays for South Dakota. So I think he plays a little bit more, the younger brother does. And so we got that to look forward to, brother on brother.
Right, the Dakotas battling.
In Dakota.
Heck yeah. No, that's setting up to be a good one for sure. Moving along, we got the Delaware at Montana game. Fritz, we'll just go right back to you. I know you were at this one. Just your reaction to the Griz taking care of business at home.
Yeah, what a perfect setup. I think I retweeted somebody's photos. At 6:51, it was a perfect fall day. And by 7:10, there was a coating of snow on the field. And I thought, that first touchdown pass that went to Fonts for 55 yards, the replay was hilarious because you looked up at the Griz vision and you really couldn't see him running through the snow down the sideline. It was just big flakes, maybe a little bit of a weird situation to throw yourself into if you're Delaware. And I don't know, I thought for a moment, because they scored at the end of the first half and then they had the ball coming out at halftime, most of that stadium goes out and carbo loads at halftime and is late getting back in for the third quarter. So almost every team defers and then takes the ball going north to south to get away from the noise, what little noise there is early in the third quarter. And they were driving, and then the ball got popped loose. Jackson Lee picked it up and scooped and scored. Awfully close to not being a fumble. In fact, at the time, I kind of doubted it was. But that's what it turned out to be. It was a fumble and a scoop and score. And after that, it was over. And I thought Montana would win. I kind of thought I was being funny by picking 49-48 because that was a score by which Delaware beat them 30 years ago. And Montana did get 49 points. Yeah, I was a little off on Delaware. But
just a little, but hey, you'll take it, though. You'll take it, though. I know I can't help but think Coach Bobby Houck was looking at the sky fist pumping a little bit like, thank you for this snow. I know the Blue Hens couldn't have prepared for this. Mark, just your reaction to that game.
Yeah, just kind of like what Fritz said. I mean, the most dominant performance of the weekend, and so if they keep that up, that was pretty good in the snow. I mean, I was enjoying being indoors watching the Vandals play. So hope you enjoyed being outdoors and covering the Griz.
Yeah. I was indoors.
Smart man. Yeah, no, that was some football weather for sure. Ian, any takeaways from this one? And then we'll move into the Salukis at Vandals game and then kind of move along from there from the reactions.
Yeah, it was really just kind of Montana capitalizing on some Delaware mistakes. Mentioned the 2 fourth down stops earlier that kind of let them go on that run where they went up 26-6, I think it was. So just them capitalizing early. And then we've talked a lot about the snow so far. I grew up in the Mid-Atlantic as well, like 2 hours from Delaware. They're not used to snow like that. So I think that clearly made a difference in that game as well.
Yeah, that Rocky Mountain weather was at full force for sure. Hard to predict that. No, well said. Yeah, my only takeaway from that one, other than all the things you guys said, well said. 5 different players had touchdowns for the Griz. It just feels like that's the kind of team they are. You look at the box score, there's not one guy who leaps out at you. They do it a lot of different ways, and this time of year, keeping guys fresh, I think that's a big reason they've had success down the stretch. It feels like they're willing to use their depth to their advantage, and that goes a long way, keeping guys healthy and just keeping fresh legs out there. Mark, let's go to you. Just your kind of reaction to that Idaho game. Heck of a win for the Vandals. Definitely kind of a nerve-wracking win for Vandals Nation, but they got it done when it matters. Just your reaction to that win.
Yeah, it wasn't looking good for most of the night. I mean, I guess the good thing was that Southern Illinois wasn't explosive enough to put enough points on the board to blow them out, to get a big enough lead where it would matter. So the Vandals were always in the game, and then Jermaine Jackson, like you mentioned earlier, breaks that punt return. And I'll have to thank him later because he ran right by me on the sideline so I could get a nice picture of him. So that was kind of cool. He brought it up that side, and that tied the game. Then Southern Illinois goes down and ties it again, or takes the lead, and then Idaho comes down and ties it on a series of, I think there must have been about 9 penalties on 9 snaps before they finally scored. And then Southern Illinois, I mean, they should have won it. I mean, they drove down. They did what they needed to do. They got it inside around the 20. They ran it over to the middle of the field so the guy could kick it. And then X-Ray Alexander blocks it, So, it should be very easily could have been Southern Illinois advancing.
Yeah.
But once they went into overtime, I thought Idaho had the advantage because I thought their offense was a little better in that kind of scenario. They probably could score easier or more different ways than maybe Southern Illinois. And as it turned out, I think it was the second throw or the third down where the guy missed the guy and threw the interception, and then kind of felt like it was going to be the Vandals after that.
Yeah, Idaho played tough all game long. Like you said, even when they were out of it, it never felt like they were completely out of it. No, it was just a heck of an effort. And like you said, it served them well in overtime. They have the better offense for sure of the two teams, and that benefited them. Fritz, your reaction to that game?
Well, you have to keep respecting the MVC because Southern Illinois' defense is really good. It was a season low in yardage, 287 for Idaho. They were 2 for 16 on third downs. They could not really get much of a running game going, including when they got down to first and goal. I think it took them, if you count 2 offsides on the Salukis, it took him 7 tries from inside the 1 to get into the end zone. And the other thing that jumped out at me is Hayden Hatton. I think he had a pretty pedestrian outing until they were down 17-10. Then they went 83 yards and he had 61 yards of it. So he's always going to be there when they need the big catch and the big gainer. He's the one that got him down to the 1 yard line with a 24-yard gain. And big plays come up big. Big players come up big.
Yeah, no, Hatton had a heck of a game. He did it, and it feels like all their primetime games, he stepped up. He's one of those guys you expect him to thrive in the moment. Ian, your takeaways from that one?
Yeah, you mentioned earlier, just special teams. How important is that unit? Scored 13 of their points in that game with the 2 field goals and that punt return. Mark mentioned the block field goal attempt late in the fourth quarter. But yeah, man, shout out to Jermaine Jackson and Ricardo Chavez, the kicker. I loved watching that game, watching them high five all the fans at Kippy Dome. That was really cool to see. You don't really see that a ton in like major college football, like FCS. Seeing them all high five the fans, like getting it on TV, I thought that was really cool.
That's what it's all about right there. Those are moments you don't forget as a player and as a fan for sure. You gotta love that. My takeaway from this one, kind of, Anthony Woods and McCoy didn't have their typical games and they still found a way to win. That's kind of what it's all about, playoff football. Your best 2 players, arguably Hatton's right there too, of course. Kind of have a down game and you still pull it off. Playoff football, it's a dogfight. We've talked about special teams more on this show than we probably have the whole year combined already, but that's just how it goes this time of year where everyone's evenly matched. You make a couple more plays, and Vandals did just enough to get out of there and keep their season alive, and now they're going to be hosting the Great Danes, University of Albany, so we'll talk about that one a little more in a second, but that home field advantage definitely came into play in a game like that. You want to have in overtime, especially that home field advantage makes a difference. We'll just real quick get your guys' final thoughts on Sac State, Montana State seasons, just because won't be talking about them much anymore for a little bit. Any final thoughts on them? Mark, we'll start with you and then just kind of go from there. You could kind of wrap them both into one, nothing crazy.
Yeah, I guess especially more so Montana State. I mean, I realize the way they like to play with the 2 quarterbacks, and it's tough to not feature them because they're 2 of their better athletes and 2 of their better carriers, but it just seems like, and I guess they figure one of them is always going to be healthy enough to play, but it seems like you're just setting yourself up to, but somebody's going to be hurt, and that's the reason you lose and stuff like that. And Malot's been dinged up, and I don't know if Chambers has been dinged up at all. Fritz might know a little bit more about that, but it just seems like the way you do it, I guess the advantage is they can both throw too, so they're not just running quarterbacks that maybe can throw to a wide open receiver. They're good passers too. It just seems like the more your quarterback runs, it's the old dog chasing the car thing. So I guess you gotta find a way to move the ball somehow, but it just seems like that you gotta have other ways to move it other than those 2.
Yeah, no, well said. It's like there's a reason you don't see guys running it 25 times a game in the NFL. You can only take so many hits. Got to protect your assets. QB, I hate to say it, but coming into the year, I think I talked with Fritz, or maybe it was on here, but I said my concern for the Bobcats is, will they stay healthy when it matters? They'll beat up Cal Poly, they'll beat up NAU if they have 1 QB, but if either of those guys get hurts, they don't look the same. That's what happened in the biggest game of the year. So it's a tough one for sure. You hate to see their year end like that, but yeah, that's the reality of football. Fritz, just any final thoughts on those 2 teams that have been eliminated, and just kind of we'll move into some previews from there.
Yeah. Well, we mentioned 3 really explosive running quarterbacks, Caden Bennett, Tommy Malott, and Sean Chambers, and all three of them are banged up. I really didn't like that formation where Malott got hurt. Couldn't keep him honest with maybe putting a running back there, so they knew it was going to go. He was going to run it. He gets squished and injures an ankle yet again. It's happened every year. It's happened more than once in a couple years. And then Chambers comes in and almost takes one to the barn, but he's limping down the sidelines, and it turns out he's got a thigh bruise that dates back to probably October, and he has not practiced very much, and it kind of shed some light on why he didn't play much against Idaho and why he didn't play much against Montana either. So, quarterback was already a volatile position before he started running them 20 times a game. So, NDSU has won a lot of championships with running QBs, but they didn't usually run Jensen or whoever was back there, Wentz especially. They don't run him that much. So maybe balance that a little bit more with a deep running back crew, which, by the way, the Cats have. So that's how I feel about that.
No, well said. Ian, your final thoughts on these two team seasons, anything you want to throw out there?
I'll talk a little bit about Sac State. Getting the playoffs the first year under head coach Andy Thompson, that's clearly something they can build off of. Even if they did sneak in there a little bit, keep them honest. But, winning a playoff game and then losing a game where you go down early, your quarterback gets hurt, I think this is something they can take away from this year and build off of coming back into next year.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Ian. That was kind of in my notes. Andy Thompson, first-year head coach, get a road playoff win and kind of just stabilize the program. You never know, first-year head coach, how it's going to go. It looks like Sac State's still going to be hanging around. They're a playoff-caliber program. You can expect them to build next year moving forward. As far as Montana State, I will say I think they're still a top-tier Big Sky team, top-tier FCS team. Just comes down to the little things in football. They lost bad in the Brawl of the Wild, but their other three losses, South Dakota State, Idaho, and NDSU, combined 8 points. So could have gone 11-1. Instead, here they are 8-4, and they're out of it. So that's just football. Fritz mentioned they had 3 guys hit the transfer portal. Chambers is going to be out of eligibility. So interested to see how they retool a little bit. Might have a little different look. Maybe you find a way to keep your QBs a little less, a little more healthy, less banged up. So we'll see what happens. But overall, good year, but just came down to a couple plays in each game, and that's what does it for you. We'll move into the previews for each game. I did want to just real quick mention the Big Sky. 2 new head coaches. UC Davis hired Tim Plow. Dan Hawkins is gone, so Plow will be the new face of UC Davis, former Aggies QB. NAU hired Brian Wright to take over the program after Chris Ball was fired. I was going to ask you guys your reaction to these, but more so I just want to say, of the 2 jobs, what did you guys think was the more attractive position, Davis or NAU? We'll start with you, Ian. We'll go around real quick, and then we'll get into those previews.
Just kind of quick thought. I thought it was Davis. Obviously, I thought this was a team that should have made the playoffs this year. Getting in there as a head coach, I think that'll be a bit of a better mood, even though Northern Arizona did have a pretty solid year this year.
No, well said. Davis definitely has the pieces. How about you, Mark?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Davis, a little bit ahead of NAU, although NAU isn't a bad job. They were kind of on the fringe there, too. Plow is kind of a name in Idaho because he was at Boise State most recent, and he got fired early in the season in 2022 as the offensive coordinator. So, but he's able to, land on his feet ever since then. And it sounds like he's pretty highly regarded at Davis. The other thing that was funny was some people just figured, well, Cody Hawkins would just leave ISU and go back to Davis and follow his dad. So that was, kudos to him for not for not doing that. So.
Yeah, Bengals fans could breathe a little easier. They would not have liked that. After having a little bit of a trend in the right direction, to lose Hawkins would have been a heartbreaker. How about you, Fritz? Just thoughts on the moves and which job was a little more attractive?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that I think both those coaches that left, I think they left NDU and UC Davis better than they found it, but yet they're still gone. Davis is a little bit more attractive job, although even those public schools in California are tough to get into and therefore tough to recruit to. NDU, I've always thought, should cycle up into the upper edge of the standings more often than they do. I think Flagstaff's a cool college town, and they play indoors. It's at elevation, but they play indoors. And I thought, while we're on the subject, Jeff Schote landing at Nevada, I thought was pretty cool. He should have had the Boise State job 3 years ago, I thought, and didn't get it. And then bolted MSU, and I think MSU got their best case scenario out of that deal because that was an awfully late departure by Jeff. and now he's in Nevada. And let's see how he does against Boise State. It's a little bit outside our Big Sky Conference, but I thought it was worth mentioning.
Former Bobcats coach, it all ties in. No, I feel it. I got to agree with you guys. UC Davis, you got Miles Hastings coming back, Lan Larson, Big Sky Player of the Years back. Got to think they're in a position to compete early. Plow was their former OC a few years ago as well, so he's going to have familiarity there. I will say NAU, Fritz mentioned it, cool town, and Southwest is a recruiting hotbed. You can start getting some of those Texas guys. Arizona has a lot of football products, so talent-wise, NAU's in a position to compete, just a matter of hauling in the right players. I thought it was interesting, kind of a fun fact, Brian Wright, former Montana State offensive coordinator, actually back in the day, and now he's been at Pittsburgh State, which is actually in Kansas. That was my fun fact of the day. I was sitting there thinking he's from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I had to look that one up. So that's D2 Pittsburgh State. That's a new one in Kansas. So I didn't know that one. But no, I got to agree. Davis move forward is the job to take there. All right, we'll move into the playoff action on the horizon this weekend. Just get your guys' predictions. It's been a long show. Thank you guys, everybody, for taking the time to do this. Everybody checking it out. Been talking a lot of Big Sky action today. We'll start out with the Griz game. They're taking on the Furman Paladins, 7th seed Paladins, 2nd seed Griz. Going to be on ESPN2 this Friday night. Little Friday Night Lights college edition. Don't see that all the time. So Big Sky After Dark. Just your guys' expectations for this one. We'll start with you, Fritz. The Griz, they have the 4th best scoring defense in the country. The Paladins have the 7th best scoring defense in the country. So potentially could be a defensive battle. We'll get your thoughts on it and go around.
I think it'll be a good game. I don't think it'll be a 30-point blowout like we saw last week, but I have to pick the Griz. Part of the reason is the Southern Conference has had a ton of national champions, but none since Sac State in 2007. And they haven't had a semifinalist since 2012, and that was Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern and App State are both up in the FBS now. Furman is the one team in that league that has a national title. It dates back to '88. They lost to the Griz in the ON championship. They're good. They have a ton of seniors. They have a quarterback that's pretty dynamic. And I think a lot of it is their defense is pretty stout. I just couldn't tell if the speed of the Big Sky was there in the Southern Conference when I rewatched their game the other day. Their second defeat of Chattanooga. So off the top of my head, having watched the game, I'd still pick the Griz by a couple scores.
Yeah, I saw today Montana Sportsbet did drop the line. I think Griz were 21-point favorites, which I was surprised to see that. But so, yeah, maybe go hammer that one. No, I'm kidding. But, Ian, your thoughts on this game? should be an interesting one,
yeah. You mentioned Furman's scoring defense giving up just under 17 points per game. But what they've really done well is play well against the run, allowing less than 93 yards allowed per game. So it'll be kind of strength-on-strength football there on Friday. Should be a good one. I think it'll be a lot closer than that 21-point spread.
Yeah, I'm kind of expecting a little bit more of a dogfight. Cold weather, Missoula that sets up for a defensive battle. How about you, Mark?
Yeah, hang on. I gotta call my bookie on that one. Anyway, yeah, I agree with you. You look at Furman's numbers; they're not too bad. 352 yards a game, 27 points a game. But like Fritz said, you don't know how good the competition is that they played, on that schedule and stuff like that. And notice their quarterback is their second leading rusher, so another running quarterback. So you can't have a playoff game apparently in the FCS without running quarterback. So, but I think it's the same thing the Griz have done the last 6 or 8 weeks. Great defense and run the ball, quarterback who can throw it and run it a little bit, and they should be able to take care of business.
Yeah, no, I have the Griz taking care of business as well. Like I said, it's about 3 touchdown spread. I don't know if it'll get that big of a blowout. That being said, I did see it was interesting. The Griz have outscored their last 5 opponents, 194-43 in their 5 wins. Last close game was the Idaho game in October. So you don't want to turn it into a close game late where you really haven't been playing those kind of ball games. Really want to get off to a good start. Let McDowell get it rolling, and don't let that be. We've seen how these last couple weeks have gone. You don't want to be in a one-score game late in college football playoffs because things get a little funky. So I'm really hoping the Griz can get it done early and make it a little more of a comfortable game after the way we've seen it gone down the last few weeks. That being said, home field advantage, 2 elite defenses, just shaping up to be an epic game, December football. Let's move on to the Vandals. Last thing on the radar for this week. Mark, we'll start with you. Go-to guy for Idaho. They're coming off the win over the Salukis. Albany, they're a tough team. They also have a great scoring defense, top 10 in the country. They don't allow a lot of points. So just your thoughts on this matchup and what you're expecting.
Yeah, where's the love? We're the only game that's not on linear television. We're on ESPN Plus. Everybody else is on one of the other networks and stuff like that. I think Jason Eck, the Idaho coach, he was a little happy at least that he didn't have to play the Friday night game, so he had the same schedule for turning that around. So he'll let Montana come back on short rest and stuff like that. Albany, just looking at Albany, they look a lot like Southern Illinois, although except their defense might be even better. Their offense kind of looks pedestrian like Southern Illinois. So I think even if they keep the Vandals in check with their defense for most of the game or some of the game, the Vandals will stay close. And I think they have enough explosiveness and balance that they can find a way to come back and win it like they did last week.
Yeah, and doing it at home only helps. Ian, your thoughts on that one?
Both Big Sky teams are playing against really, really good run defenses this week. I think if I remember right, Albany has the number one rushing defense in the FCS this year, but they're a little more susceptible against the pass, giving up around 220 yards per game. I think they just got to get that passing game going again, or passing game going this week. As opposed to last week where their offense was struggling a little bit, relied more on the special teams. But, I think this is going to be a really, really close game.
Shaping up to be a good one for sure. Fritz, your final thoughts on the Idaho matchup? Just what do you see going down Saturday?
I see Hayden Hatton and Giovanni McCoy making a big difference against the Great Danes. The Great Danes have had a good program for quite a while. It's another case where I don't think the conference is quite as deep and I don't know, physical maybe as the Big Sky. So I think Idaho will win. I don't think they'll need overtime.
Yeah, no, and you just to echo your guys' thoughts, I thought the same thing about the conference style plays gonna be a little different. And Hayden Hatton's a name right here on my notes. I really feel like McCoy and Hatton are gonna have a big game. Jermaine Jackson, Terez Trainer. Idaho has the weapons. Mark mentioned the explosiveness. I feel like they're due to break loose for a couple big ones after a slow game versus the Salukis. If their offense gets it going, I think they can comfortably win this one. I got them. It's still being a close game. I think it's shaping up to be a great FCS game, but I got Idaho as well. That'll do it for this week's show. If there's anything else you guys want to throw out there, it's been a bit of a lengthy one, but I appreciate everyone for doing this and everyone at home listening. Epic time for FCS football, Big Sky football. Last weekend was crazier. Could it get even crazier this upcoming weekend? So we'll see how it goes. Thank you guys for taking the time to do this. I'm Josh Dugan. I'm out. Thank you again to the crew. You guys have a good one.